We all experience this uncomfortable feeling of guilt. And that happens in the workplace probably more than we realize if we would just simply recognize and be able to put our finger on it. In this video, I want to touch on a couple points of where guilt comes from and how we can shed that guilt and just at least close that gap so that we aren't living from a guilt perspective. And so, one of the places that guilt comes from in the workplace is this feeling of not enjoying certain elements of work. And what I mean by that is sometimes our boss may ask us to do something and we just feel less than enthused to say yes and do that thing. But because we want to be a good employee, because we want to be a team player, we do that, and naturally, and we should. But it doesn't mean that we necessarily have to enjoy that work more. It's sort of like asking an introvert to enjoy being more extroverted. Something may just not come naturally to you. Now, that doesn't mean and give us an excuse to abdicate responsibility, but it does just highlight and help us just to have the awareness of saying, hey, you know what? I don't enjoy this, and that's okay, but I am a team player and I'm going to push through. The other element that we operate from guilt is when we find ourselves comparing to other colleagues and we see them and we just have this illusion. Sometimes it's not even real, sometimes it's just an illusion that they are thriving and that they're just so good at a certain element of their job. And we begin to almost envy and wish that we were as good as them. And we see them as up here and we see ourselves down here. And what that does is, it starts us with a mentality that is from a deficit perspective, that we are lacking somehow and we need to try and attain a particular thing. But what it also does is it diverts our attention from the things that we are good at, where we bring value. And so we almost devalue the things that we have. And because it's seen as down here, as opposed to elevating, not in a prideful or egotistical way, or that says, like, hey, look at me, look what I can do, but just recognizing and having the confidence saying, hey, this is the value that I bring to the team. And it's going to look different and it's going to play out different in different scenarios. What they're good at has a season, has a place. What you're good at has a season, has a place. And oftentimes, when we have that deficit perspective, we're always going to be seeing that it is the more beneficial strength, so to speak, to have. And we're going to be diminishing and seeing ours as not as valuable. And so that brings me to my first point of how to begin to shed that guilt is begin to look for the things that you are good at, and B, the types of work that give you joy and energy, that you just feel like you're thriving. It feels like that you could maybe do that thing all day. And if you were to do that more and more at your work, you would find more job satisfaction. It's not about abdicating responsibility for the other things that we don't enjoy, but it's just look for the things that give you joy. Look for the things that give you energy. And even if it's only a small portion of your day, even just recognizing that, I believe, is going to bring a more healthy perspective to how you approach work. So look for what you're good at, look for where you are finding energy, and then begin to combine those things, because sometimes we are good at things that don't give us a lot of joy and energy. We're not necessarily feeling like we're thriving in that. And so just even finding out, hey, where do those things intersect? And the next thing is to look for the where other people seem to be thriving. That same idea, what are people good at? Where does it seem like they are thriving and they feels like they're experiencing some joy and energy from doing certain work? Again, we don't know for sure, but you just begin to look for those things. And secondly, appreciate and express gratitude for yourself, and just gratitude and saying, hey, I realize that this is what I bring to the table, and be grateful for that. Maybe write it in a journal. Maybe just talk about that with your spouse or with family or with a friend, and just say, hey, this is the value. And it doesn't need to be egotistical. That's not what I'm saying. I think it's a humble activity, actually, to be able to say and acknowledge and be grateful for the things that you do have, but also looking for the ways that your team brings value to them. So what are they good at? What are they where does it seem like they're experiencing joy and thriving? And express appreciation for that as well. Because the reality is, what we look for, we begin to feel and sense that our actions are following suit. And our mind and our emotions, I believe, will follow those things that we look for. And so if we're operating from guilt, I feel like guilt is a very cyclical thing that happens and it just goes over and over. We feel guilty and rehash the thoughts in our mind and it just goes over and over. And that's not really helpful. But when we're looking for something specifically, I believe it breaks that cycle and we begin to look for good things and we begin to set our mind on things that are noble and worthy. And so we want to do that within the context of work, within the context of ourselves, again, of what we're good at and what we enjoy, what others are good at and what they enjoy, and just and celebrate and express appreciation for those things. And I believe that will begin to change just your healthy perspective and your mindset. So, on that note, the 6 types of working genius is really a great way, an eye opener to begin to see and help you acknowledge what you're good at, but also where you thrive. And that is actually probably the thing I should emphasize is that when we talk about a genius, we are talking about the place where you thrive at work, what gives you joy and energy. And when we can begin to identify that, it's a real game changer for you personally and for your team productivity as a team when you begin to discuss those things together. If you're interested in taking this another step with your team, I would love to chat with you, share more about how this model, the 6 types of working genius by Pat Lencioni, can be a major factor in your game as a team in terms of productivity, but also job satisfaction. So let's get in touch. I'll walk you through a workshop real quick over a Zoom call just to show you and so you could see and be in the driver's seat in determining whether this would be a valuable investment for your team.